Hey everyone, and welcome back to something a little bit different today. So, I've been wanting to join a Pokemon Draft League for a while, and I finally came across a league on Reddit that seemed to fit most of what I was looking for. So, I messaged the guy running it and worked a couple things out and figured I could do it. So, today we're going to be going over the draft, basically what I drafted, the team overview, as well as the general rules for the setup so you guys kind of know what I'm working with. So, it is a 6v6 doubles league. We had a tier list where we got to choose one S Pokemon, two A Pokemon, four B, two C, and one Paradox. It was a snake draft, so we drafted in orders 1 through 10, then 10 through 1, and we started out with tiers A, B, and C. And then after that, in the second round, it was one S tier and then your Paradox Pokemon, is kind of how it went over. So I had the number 10 pick, which meant that I got to draft two Pokemon back to back for most of the draft. I should note the second phase that had S tier and Paradox Pokemon had a different draft order than the first phase. So, going through the draft, knowing I had back to back Pokemon, I knew I had my eye on a couple of pairings. Mousehold Annihilate was one of them. If I could have gotten Meowscarada was a big one. I was thinking about Dondozo and Tatsugiri. Somebody drafted Dondozo. Funnily enough, Tatsugiri was never taken. I believe Meowscarada was taken fourth, and Annihilate was actually the first Pokemon taken in the entire draft. So when it got to me, I didn't really have any of the pairings I wanted left. I was looking around, and I saw that Torkoal was still available. Now, most of you know, I don't have a ton of competitive Pokemon experience. And by a ton, I mean like hardly at all, let alone doubles, let alone drafts. But I knew Torkoal could be an issue, and it was one of the few Sunsetters, and the only Pokemon with Drought, I believe, that could help some of the Paradox Mons get their passive abilities off. So I decided to go with Torkoal, realizing it could give me some decent bulkiness, it could be tough to remove, and it can deal a lot of damage with Eruption. For the pick directly after it, I decided to go with Kingambit. The typing's pretty decent, but I was especially after the steel typing in a 6v6 format where you bring all 6 of your Pokemon. I was particularly interested in the Supreme Overlord ability. On weeks where I wasn't going against an Intimidate Pokemon, I felt like Supreme Overlord could really do a lot of work, especially, foreshadowing, if I could get Trick Room set up. And that's kind of what we went for. So in the next round, because again, I had to wait another 18 picks for it to come back to me, I saw that Pawmaw went about 3 picks before I was supposed to pick my third Pokemon. As one of the 2 Revival Blessing users in the entire format, I really knew I wanted one of them, and I was looking at Rabsca a little bit more, because I'm not as familiar with Rabsca as I am with Pawmot. I saw Rabsca gives me a little bit of Psychic, a little bit of Bug, but it gives me Revival Blessing, which I already knew about, and it gives me Trick Room. With that combination, I knew Rabsca was going to be my pick, and I could kind of dive into the Trick Room setup a little bit more. So we went with Rabsca, again, for the Revival Blessing, for the Trick Room, and maybe we can do some other fun stuff with it throughout the course of the season. The pick directly after that, I was thinking, okay, now that we have a couple physical, like we have a good physical attacker with Kingambit, who is another staple of Trick Room setups? And Hatterene was still open. Having a fairy type, having a big sweeper, somebody who can just put out a ton of damage and set up Trick Room themselves, all of those checked all the boxes I was looking for, and we decided to grab it. Go down a little bit farther, and again, I have to wait 18 picks, and I was thinking to myself, okay, we have a little bit of Trick Room, we have a Sunsetter for our Paradox Mon if we can get one that uses the sun. Maybe we should dive a little bit more into the sun setup. I also saw Earthworm was around. Earthworm is kind of cool because if you give it Terra-type Electric, it doesn't have a weakness. It also has Shed Tail, which can help us get our Trick Room setters in without them taking an attack, giving us pretty much a free attack, or getting a Trick Room setter in to put up Trick Room, almost for free. Also, Stealth Rock, while hazards don't seem to be as important in doubles as in singles per se, I knew Stealth Rock could still be helpful in breaking some sashes, especially with things like Tailwind, Talonflame running around, even Murkrow a little bit. So if we get it out early, that'd be huge. And then you have Body Press and Heavy Slam, which are really nice things to counter, or for coverage moves. We don't have a ton that can take advantage of Earth Eater, but we do have a couple mons throughout our team that might be able to use Earthquake depending on the matchup. After Earthworm, we decided to go with Scovillain. I was looking for something for the Chlorophyll ability, just so we could have a fast Pokemon that could do a lot of damage and give us a different speed tier other than just our Trick Room setup in case Trick Room gets countered or we don't want to set it up for whatever reason. When I saw Solar Beam, which is 1 turn in the sun, and Flamethrower, along with a little bit of utility in Will-O-Wisp, I decided to go with Scovillain. The Chlorophyll again increases its speed, so unless the opponent has Tailwind up, we should be able to go first most of the time. There's also some more supportive and defensive setups you can go with Scovillain that might be useful down the line depending on who we face. So I was actually talking with our guy during the draft, and I was talking to him about Trick Room setup, and he knew I wasn't too experienced. And he kind of pointed to me that maybe I should have one more Trick Room sweeper. Maybe somebody who can provide a lot of utility and a lot of coverage, and Hariyama does that. Now, Hariyama has pretty poor speed, but really nice attack and hit points, so it can hopefully stay around a while. With the Protect, Close Combat, Earthquake, and Knockoff, these are all 3 really hard-hitting moves we can get him to go off. We give it Guts and Flame Orb, so we can either get it out with like a Earthworm Shed Tail, letting it attack, like letting Flame Orb proc and then attack, or we can just hard switch it in, protect the next turn for Flame Orb proc, and then get either a big Earthquake or a big knock off, or just a big close combat. The hope is with one of those, we have enough coverage, and we can also get like Stone Edge if we don't want Earthquake. We would have enough coverage to hopefully one-shot one of the opponent's mons. After that, we had our last pick, and we still needed a C tier, and I saw Klefki. Steel and Fairy typing is very interesting to me. It doesn't have a whole lot of weaknesses outside of fire and ground, since it doesn't have Levitate. But it was another Trick Room setter. I don't have Trick Room on this set. I just made generic sets. Could put out some hazards. Also a screen setter. And we could also put Thunderwave on it with with Prankster. All of these, especially with Prankster, seem to really give us the support Pokemon we were lacking outside of maybe Klefki and to a point Rabska. But being able to set up screens would really be helpful. That rounded out our first 8 Pokemon, and we only had our our S tier and our Paradox Pokemon left. Funnily enough, I had first pick for S tier and Paradox, so that meant I had first pick of the S tier and last pick of Paradox. S tier took me a little while, because I didn't know if I wanted something defensive like an Amoonguss that could really do well and help direct threat away from my Trick Room sweepers in case I didn't have Trick Room up, as well as just be a pain to get off the field. I was thinking about maybe Tyranitar just for some rock coverage. Garchomp was there too, again for faster speed. But in the end, I decided to go with Hydreigon. There's also Goldengo, but I already had King Gambit. But yeah, I decided to go with Hydreigon. One nice thing about Hydreigon is it can learn Tailwind, which would give me a completely different setup in terms of speed. We could do like a Sun Tailwind setup and hopefully outspeed our opponent in a way they're not necessarily expecting. So if they try to come in with countering Trick Room with their own Trick Room, we'd have different ways to mess with them. Also as Heat Wave, it can also learn Heat Wave, which under Sun could be a huge deal. Protect, which I like, and then Dark Pulse, Draco Meteor, Earth Power. Just the amount of offensive pressure a Hydreigon can put out is absolutely amazing, and I really wanted it for that reason as well. And finally, we got Brute Bonnet. This was actually a Paradox Mon I had my eye on once I realized it might still be available about halfway through the Paradox drafting phase. I didn't know a whole lot about Paradox Pokemon. All I knew was about Photosynthesis. I knew Brute Bonnet could learn Spore, which I wanted Breloom or Jumpluff during the draft. And Jumpluff went in the first round, which surprised me. And then Breloom also went a couple picks before I was able to grab it. So being able to pick up a Brute Bonnet was also pretty nice. Again, it gets close combat. Sucker Punch, in case we want to deal with some psychic types or stuff like that. And then bullet seeds as well with loaded dice to maybe deal with some pesky water types, ground types, or rock types. It can put out quite a bit of damage, especially with photosynthesis. What also drew it to me was knowing that it could have a more defensive setup. You could do things like Sucker Punch, Leech Seed. No, Synthesis is what I'm thinking about. Sorry. I had a setup before, and I couldn't remember what it was. But, like, Spore, Sucker Punch, Synthesis, and Rage Powder. And then if you didn't want Sucker Punch, you could do, like, Seed Bomb for grass coverage. And then you could run, like, Leftovers if you didn't already have it. Or Booster Energy to proc the Photosynthesis. But basically gave me another setup I could bring and change it up completely from just almost glass cannon we have going on there. So overall, we are mostly a Trick Room team with some Sun shenanigans as well. But I feel like between the Tailwind and the Chlorophyll, we have a couple speed tricks that we can work in, and we have a couple different modes our team can enter. Because even if we're just a Sun team, we still have Eruption, Heat Wave, Drought. We have Heat Wave on, like, the Hydreigon, Chlorophyll, Scovillain. We have some options we can make work. And then hopefully Drought would also help with any water weaknesses we might have. Though that was kind of my idea behind drafting. This was the first draft I'd ever done, but in general, I'm fairly happy with how it turned out. Something I'm going to have to figure out is when do I want to bring like King Gambit or Earthworm. And I think that might just be a typing thing. I feel like I have a couple Pokemon that are very specific uses, and I just have to identify when those uses are going to be so we can make use out of it. Anyway, I'm going to be doing a team building video for every week of the Draft League, as well as I'm going to try to record all my matches and do post commentary on all of those. So hopefully you guys can expect to see about 2 videos a week for all of my matches, and hopefully we'll make top 3 and make the playoffs, which would be very cool. Hopefully everyone's going to enjoy this journey as much as I do, and I will see everyone in the comments and on my Discord and in the videos. Take care.